Hey there and welcome. Oh, we're in for an interesting one today, and my gosh, isn't it beautiful outside? So it is very difficult to be in here at 5 o'clock when it is so gorgeous outside, but I did get out a little bit earlier. Let me pull my screen here. There we go. Welcome. We're gonna make this just a little bit larger for the moment. Last week, we started off with resume renovation on Tuesday, followed up by LinkedIn Showplace, which is really how to build your professional network with LinkedIn and how to use it for your job search. We're going to refer to that lecture today. That lecture is available. I'll point you toward it. Today is the social media marketing in your job search lecture. And then this Thursday, that is on the 11th, 2 days from now, that'll be a 12 noon lecture. And that is supercharging your job search. It's all about how to really organize and manage it. Tragedy that I see in job search is so many job seekers seem to believe that job search is sitting on the internet looking at job postings, and that is pure tragedy. We'll explain all of that on Thursday's lecture and really show you the other 14 pathways that you also need to check out to understand where your potential opportunity may be. Well, as we get going this evening or this afternoon, depending on how we like to look at it, this is Career Evolution. It's social media marketing for your job search or for your career. You may be employed right now, but you'd like to lift your brand a little bit higher. Of course, the right LinkedIn profile will elevate your brand. Be sure to watch that lecture if you haven't seen it. But once you have a great LinkedIn profile, that is really only part of the story, as you see right here. Now that I have this great LinkedIn profile, what am I supposed to do with it? Everyone says, got to have a LinkedIn profile, got to have a LinkedIn profile, better be good. And then I hear crickets. Well, a great LinkedIn profile can be very similar to like a great travel brochure. Most of us haven't been doing too much travel these days, but think back to really anytime we've been in a hotel and over in the lobby in some corner, of course, there's a travel rack with little brochures of what's going on in the area. See if there might be something to invest your time in that's worth seeing, that kind of thing. If you go over there, you see some of those brochures are a little dusty, haven't been touched very often. Nice looking, but nobody's looking at it. Today is really part 2 to my LinkedIn lecture. Part 1 is how to build a great LinkedIn profile that becomes a 3-dimensional sales brochure all about you that naturally drives the reader to a singular conclusion. My gosh, if I work with this person, hire this person, best business decision I'm going to make that day. But today's lecture is really now how do I take that wonderful asset that you may have created, and now how do I use it as a selling and marketing tool as part of the outreach? Or another way, how do you take control of your career story? Another way to think about it, because every single piece of media you put out there about yourself or players within your industry or challenges within the industry, all of which you might attach a few words of opinion to, each one of those bits that might go onto social media has an effect on your brand. In case you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker. Resume and LinkedIn guru as well. If you need some work on your resume or need some work creating a really amazing LinkedIn profile, I think you know where to find me. By the way, packages are all over my website under the services tab. You can see everything there. A few more things, resources that'll help you. These are over on my LinkedIn profile. How to avoid the biggest mistake in job search. That's time mismanagement, really. How to supercharge your job search, which will piggyback onto what I'll teach you in depth on Thursday at 12 noon. And how your resume does not become resume roadkill, which is a little bit of additional information in addition to the resume renovation lecture that I teach. So let me just play this quickly for you. And we'll start in about 2 minutes. I'm going to pull this center screen. I'm John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about using LinkedIn and getting the best out of social media marketing. Your business is built on perception. Perception of the products or the services or of your reputation. Business today is judged by web presence, not just a business's website. In our traditional work life, we didn't hesitate to network with the right people when an opportunity arose. That chance to meet the right people that could help our career. But as a small business owner, sometimes it's all you. It becomes easy for us to prioritize networking away. Oh, not today. Until it's never on today's list. We have so many other hats to wear if we are to reach our dreams. And those other hats are certainly more important. It's important for every small business person to network, to open doors that you may not have even imagined yet. You need to be reaching and communicating with current and potentially new customers or clients. You need to be out there contributing to the discussion about you. And with focus, it takes much less time than you really think to be effective. But you do have to take control. You have to develop your LinkedIn profile into a 3-dimensional sales brochure, all about you, that naturally drives the reader to a singular conclusion. If I work with, hire, or buy from this person, it's the best business decision I'll make today. Then make use of social media marketing tools built into LinkedIn to be sowing your value across the network in updates and postings and other shares that influence the perception of you. Well, there's much more to share as we're just getting started. Now imagine that you have this great communication platform. By the way, that's your great LinkedIn profile that positions both you and your business professionally and effectively. And think about the effects of using and implementing a sharing on a schedule or editorial calendar to simplify your messaging. That's a powerful voice to be heard that affects perception. What would you want others to be thinking of when they are thinking of you? That's the important question. Well, gosh, that's a piece. Yes, you definitely did hear the word business. That's a piece that I put together a few years ago for Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. But if you simply replace that verbiage of your business with your career brand, it's the same challenge. You have a career brand to manage forevermore. And you really have to think about how you can use social media to do that. Now, this is part of becoming a self-recruiter. This self-recruiter is a person that not only networks in a different way, but really they represent one great candidate, which is you. And they keep one eye on the toughest competitor imaginable. There's 4, 5, or 6 people that are out there. And you're going to have to look at those individuals that may seem scary to you. And you're going to have to make sure to elevate your brand to a level that can play in that same field. Very, very important. Now, the secrets to refreshing your career story. It's also really about readying for yourself a digital self-marketing campaign. It's advertising. Yes, marketing and advertising. We're going to have to market and advertise ourselves. Oh, not like it sounds, but really, if I gently let you look over my shoulder to see what I'm reading, doing, sharing, attending, interacting with, and if I'm living and breathing my profession, by the way, if you're not employed right now, passion, living and breathing your profession does not require payment. By the way, these lectures are free of charge. There's no payment here today. And my gosh, there's plenty of passion here today. So you need to take control. You need to begin to drink the Kool-Aid to a degree and live and breathe your profession. Put together a marketing campaign, which I'll show you how to do today, that brands your career and really markets a few words of your brilliance each time. Small changes change effect over time, change the perception of you over time. It's also part of how you take control of the discussion, how you create engagement, which is a lot closer to this type of engagement. So when we think of social media, Now, we are going to talk mostly about LinkedIn today, but it's really a social media lecture. So most individuals, I think, can probably manage 2 or 3 social media platforms for their career. It might be one of these here, but the problem is that every single day there's newer and more until you could spend all of your time on social media. And my gosh, that could have some very negative outcomes. Let me fix my mic here. I had it in the other spot for the little video here. So what I want you to do is just have some clarity on social media. Now, this, I didn't invent it. I pulled it off of Facebook a couple of years ago. But, as humorous as it is, it gives us perspective. Twitter, here I am eating a donut. Facebook, I like donuts. Foursquare, I don't know who uses Foursquare anymore. So very short timeline on some of these. Instagram, here I am with a vintage photo of my donut. Well, we don't really use Instagram that way any longer. Even the usage of certain social media platforms changes over time. YouTube, here I am eating a donut. You can watch it. LinkedIn, my skills, of course, include donut eating. I'm very, very good at that. Pinterest, here's a donut recipe. Last.fm, I don't know who listens to that. Nobody these days. So we have to think about all the different reactions to social media and really understand it's simply about influence. And we can do good work and we can do poor work. I want you to do some really great work on influencing how other people think of you. Now, why social media matters? Well, all of these things here, of course, but really look at this second from the bottom. Staying on top of people's minds. With the proper use of social media, you can have virtually no contact with a very large number of people that suddenly feel like they have contact with you, suddenly feel like they know what your story is. They know all about you. And when they have a need that opens up or they need a resource like you pop into their head. You may sit and think, well, John, I have a full job search I need to do. I don't think I have time for this whole social media thing. What I'm proposing is 2 hours of homework. Yes, everything takes homework, and that's the part nobody likes, but 2 hours of homework, which you can do even this evening. And then once the homework's done, it is 2 minutes per day. Let's get it on camera. 2 minutes per day to share 4, 5, even 6 times per day. 10, 15 seconds to share, copy, paste, share, copy, paste, share, copy, paste, share, 4, 5, 6 times a day, like breathing. We're going to get into a little bit more like that. Anybody can manage an effective social media marketing campaign for their career if they just follow this recipe and put a little thought to it. Now, part of what we have to do is, of course, dress up our profiles on each platform, primarily talking about LinkedIn today, but every platform you choose, I'd certainly recommend LinkedIn because it's very hard to be hired for anything if we don't have a LinkedIn profile. In fact, I think if they're holding your resume and they can't find you on LinkedIn, is this even real? Do you even exist? In today's world, we don't exist unless we also exist in the virtual world. Not good enough just to be good at our job wherever it is or good on paper, wherever that is. We have to exist in the virtual world. So certainly LinkedIn. Hold your lunch or afternoon snack tightly. Twitter. I almost lose it every time I say that. Yep. I'm a big believer that if you'd like to be hired, you need to be on Twitter. I'm not talking about the nonsense, 154 tweets over the weekend type stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. In fact, I might recommend using Twitter the way I use Twitter. I really never go to Twitter because I'm not 13 years old any longer. And also I have a very full schedule. It's a struggle sometimes to find sleep. And so I can't be over there just wasting time away. The way I use Twitter is I connect it to my LinkedIn, and everything that I share on my LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn lectures are great one you should watch. Everything that I share on my LinkedIn, I then let seamlessly flow out to Twitter, doubling my advertising with no additional effort, essentially. Now, why is Twitter so important in John's opinion? Because a lot of companies have stopped posting jobs. You're sitting at home on the internet looking for job postings? Well, how about all those companies that stopped posting jobs? Because they've already learned to think like a detective. You give me any position, any level, any industry, doesn't really matter. Give me a few minutes to think about it. I can come up with 4, 5, or 6 words. Well, not to find someone capable or qualified. Ooh, it's like cat hair in your mouth. Ooh. I'm talking about exceptional. The person, exceptional, top of their game. 4, 5, or 6 words to find that person. And it's not very difficult. Just have to have a little imagination. I don't care what field, what level, what job. I'm looking for that. Okay, that thing you're looking for. What would the very best one of those be reading, doing, sharing, or attending? And it is a very short list. They're going to a certain conference. They're certainly reading the key books in the industry, and you better be too. Short list when we put our brain to it, and you better be doing those things too. What other platforms should you use? Well, you're going to have to think about that for yourself. If you're in creative, I don't know how you don't use Instagram for part of your mix of things. Even if you're not in creative, and in a way I really am in creative, but I use mine as a non-creative. My Instagram, I feel, is so important. It's a drop-down menu on my website. Now, a drop-down menu on the website usually seems to indicate, oh, must be important, must be important. And when you look at my Instagram, there's absolutely nothing about what I do professionally. Why is it there? Because the only reason you get hired, there's 2 reasons actually. The only reasons you get hired are, number one above all other things, is chemistry. Assuming you're capable and qualified. That goes without saying. I'm not hiring you because you're capable and qualified. I would not consider anybody that wasn't capable or qualified. So it really comes down to chemistry, number 1, and confidence in you, number 2, above all things than chemistry. And that's before the credentialing, the background, who you've worked for, what you've actually produced, assuming you're capable and qualified. So you're going to have to think about how to really differentiate yourself and also elevate yourself. You're going to have to look at each one of those platforms you do decide to use and not just make a duplicate profile. Well, yes, it's still you, or yes, it's still John Crant, whoever it might be across the board, but different aspects. Look at my LinkedIn, look at my Twitter, look at my Facebook, although I don't recommend most people use Facebook for their career. Maybe 2, 3, 4% of my clients use it that way, but they have a very high degree of ability to self-edit. And most of us can't do that. So if you looked at those 3 platforms for me, you would see things that all work synergistically together, but they're all slightly different from one another, different aspects of who I am. What you see over on my Instagram is kind of the missing piece. The 2 reasons we really get hired beyond the chemistry and confidence, and that is what makes you tick. Why are you interesting? That's the real deciding factor. You know why? Because if I hire you, my goodness, I'm going to have to spend my waking life with you. More time with you than my loved ones, really. That's why we want to like you. That's why we want to get you. It's really that simple. So it's really important to tell that other story. So on my Instagram is me hiking up the Hudson Valley quite often, actually. I was just up there this weekend again. Or climbing Half Dome out in Yosemite. Or year and a half ago, August, end of August, almost dying out in the California desert, doing a 108-degree hike, which was strongly recommended against from every piece of advice I looked at and recommended. But gosh, it was the only day I was out there. And this was one of those slot canyon in the desert dream hikes I've been looking forward to for so long. But you know what? As much as I prepared, as much as I thought of all the different ways I could die, I could not calculate my own body's inability to cool itself. It was beyond my comprehension that I wouldn't be able to cool myself off. I'm a skinny guy. I figured, oh, I'll be fine, you know. But the moment the water ran out of my body and suddenly I'm bone dry and heart rate is through the roof and took a wrong turn up in the sunlight on the plateau. The pictures from that, by the way, are over in my LinkedIn lecture. You can go take a look at that. So, you know, we have to understand a few different things here because we're going to have to approach things in a new way. In the LinkedIn lecture, I talk a lot about information being the new currency. Of course, the more information you have access to, more likely you are to leverage it to your benefit. With the LinkedIn lecture, we're really talking about extracting information that you can use for your job search or career, make your life easier if you really connect those dots. But today, what we're talking about is really seeding, planting things about you to the network, to the ether, essentially, whichever platform you're looking at. This means, yes, you're going to have to become the content guru of you. Now, most people are really too shy and modest. You know, most of us are not Kardashians. We suffer from modesty and humility. Grew up Catholic, so I know modesty and humility are really wonderful traits for every other aspect of your life, but not job search and not career. These two areas, it's going to work directly against you. You're going to have to give yourself permission to get out of your comfort zone and own it. And that means almost dangerously close to that ego and arrogance line. Now, in reality, I'm shy and introverted. I get so much laughter when people hear that. Even my close friends, they burst out laughing, almost like spit their drinks out, whatever, because they've never seen it. They're used to seeing this because I'm very good at this. But, just below the surface, I'm shy and introverted. That never really goes away. So you think someone like that wants to, I want to be the content guru of me. I want to put all this stuff out about me. It was very, very difficult for me at first, emotionally, to put this stuff out there. You can tell I've gotten past that. You're going to have to get past that too. So this is our opportunity, essentially, to either reframe or reclaim things from the past. I don't have to read everything that's up here. You can see it yourself. So I want you to think about what is possible if you gave yourself permission. And if you need my permission, I certainly give it to you. Has to be visual. Your content has to be decent. We'll talk about what that is. And you have to make it visual. And if you focus in correctly, you can change your whole future in just 60 to 90 days. Now, a little bit of perspective that might put some factual stuff behind that. Close friend of mine who's also been a long-term client of mine, a few years back, just having a very, very difficult time getting to their next level. Got to get to director, got to get to director, got to get to director. If I don't get there, it's not going to happen. I got to get there. Time's running out. Okay. Well, timing and timers, we all look at that very differently. I'm not a spring chicken any longer, but you know what? I don't think my timer's running out very soon. My father lived to 91 really without exercise and without taking full care of himself. And he lived to 91 and could have gone much further if it weren't for, Catholic deacon, couldn't resist going to do hospital run to visit with people and minister. And it's like, Dad, I don't think at 91 you need to be visiting sick people. And sure enough, picked up pneumonia, and 26 days later, all over. So I have potentially a lot of years left if I don't get hit by that bus, which I hope I don't. I might. It's New York City. So there's a lot of years left. And my friend who thought his time is running out, I'm like, well, I don't think so. Unless you're financially set, which I know he's not quite there. You've got to work and you've got to deliver value. You've got to get to director level. And the difficulty in this conversation was he had just been beat twice trying to get there. Second place. Now let's be clear. Do you know what second place is? A winner. Do you know what third place is? A winner. You do not come in first, second, or third unless you are a winner. Second or third, they just didn't check you. They didn't select you for some reason. In fact, number two or number three, I liked you most, actually. I wish I could have hired you, but with the team that I have in place, number one's a better fit. So I picked a slightly less perfect candidate that was a better fit for the chemistry and everything I had already going on the team. And at number 2 or 3, you thought you were not appreciated or not loved, and they loved you most. Let's think about how we're going to change this perception. So second place, we understand I'm coming in second place. I don't like that. Well, who is beating you? Who's beating this person? Well, my friend is in technical program management, doing like $250 million technical rollouts for a lot of different companies, that kind of thing, and knocking it out of the ballpark. In fact, missed countless rounds of layoffs, endless meat grinder in their organization, big tech name. And second place, how are we going to solve this? Well, who's beating this person? Well, my friend came up on the sales side before moving into technical project management. So you can imagine, not as technical as other people, but very good at client engagement and the talking end of it. That's why he's missed countless rounds of layoffs. The clients would go to bat for this person tomorrow. Well, who's beating them? People that come up on the technical side before moving into technical project management. So they are more technical, there's no doubt. Now, in the middle of this discussion, we also remembered or rediscovered a verbal tick. I'm not technical. I'm not technical. 20 some years ago, because I've known this person a long time, they were not technical. In fact, in that time, they dotted line reported to me, and the conversation was, no, I'm not technical. I'm not technical. Show me this copy and paste thing. I'm like, whoo, that is not technical. But over the years, they've become very technical. They're knocking it out of the ballpark in what they're doing. They just never stopped saying it. I imagine must have said 10 million times to all their coworkers, I'm not technical. I'm not technical. You know what they think of that person? Not technical. So we have to, first off, change our verbiage. I had to threaten to come down to King of Prussia, where my friend lives. I said, I'm going to come down there with the kitchen shears if I hear that again. So bite down hard on the tongue, something to break that. And then we put together a social media marketing campaign, just like I'm going to teach you today. And literally in about 60 days, it went from second place, clear choice for the role, into a role he'd never held before, head of process and quality. And he did so well, landed his new job after that. I want you to think about how you can change your future, even after years of maybe throwing yourself verbally under the bus, very, very quickly. And a lot of it is going to be accomplished or corrected by branding your career. Now, when we brand our career, yes, we have to talk about LinkedIn, but in my view, we also have to talk about Twitter. You got a little tiny view there of how the profiles of each are just slightly different, even though they work together so well. And then all of this content you see going across the screen, I let flow across all those platforms. Excuse me. They go all across those platforms, and you realize over time, this has a tremendous effect of how they think about you. And everything begins to change very, very quickly because boom, 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 this is the imprint in their head. This is not very difficult to do. We're going to have to think about what you can do. Now, these may be distracting because there's an awful lot of John in these pictures. I don't expect you to share an awful lot of you unless you're a public person in your profession, but I do expect you to share an awful lot about who are the players in your field, what are the challenges within your field, what are some of the great articles and books that are in your field, with 4, 5, 6 words of comment. That's the magical part for you. So we have to go back to the beginning, which I talk about in resume, I talk about in the LinkedIn profile, and that's the fact that we're a product. We're a product. So your product, what is it that you do better? You're going to have to understand how you're this standout in your field. And by the way, I'm sorry if I'm the one sharing this with you and it's new to you, but 8, 10, 12, 15 years, whatever it might be in the same role does certainly not make you an expert. In fact, I've met a whole lot of those people that are absolutely not an expert. They're an expert at doing something one way, and most of the times they've been stuck in an organization that didn't do it correctly. So you're an expert at not doing it correctly? That's not an expert. That's not something, that is the sell piece. So yes, you're going to have to go back and do some analysis and either understand why or how you're going to become this standout in your field. And you have to mix that or marry that with the fact that we're facing enormous opportunity. Yeah, I know everyone thinks there's such challenges, and there are. Still don't have my vaccine. Still a little too young, even with today's announcement. I'm just a little too young still and too healthy. Gosh darn it. But there's a lot of possibility out there. And that's because companies are beginning to rethink everything. Very interesting article today on CNN that it's never going back to the way it was as far as the workplace. And I think that's largely true. Some will, and many will not. It's going to evolve from here after this, greatest experiment of all time in remote working, when they realize I could cut that $10, $12, $15,000 per person expenditure, have them work at home, and I can invest that money in different ways. So yeah, let's go back and maybe give yourself a little bit of literary license. What would you like to do? Because it's adaptability, new ideas, and people that have confidence that are not afraid to try something new that are really getting noticed. So let's start with just some basics. How do you want them to perceive you? How do you want them to see you? What do you want them to think about you? Well, maybe you have to look at some questions like this. What qualities do you have, or what makes you tick, or where's your passion? What do you love to do? This is a brainstorming where you're going to have to dig around and figure out. Don't think of the end job. What would you like to be involved in? Who's doing that? They must have all sorts of roles around that. And that's going to be a whole lot more interesting to you. And that's going to take you to a place where you can use your ability, be passionate, be driven, all of these things here. And you can also persuade them that a person like you is really the future with your adaptability and all that you bring to the table. You're the future of a company like theirs. All we have to do now, besides verbally conveying that, is really take that essence of that story that we're now deciding to tell about ourselves and showcase it on social media. We're going to hit the chessboard. We're going to do some strategic sharing, essentially. And we're going to think about how each thing that I allow them to see as I look over the shoulder or they look over my shoulder begins to change everything. They begin to see me in a very new way. So let's go back to how others in your company, in your industry, doesn't really matter. How are they judging you? What criteria would they look at to judge you? It's not so different from the same question of what should I share on my network? What should I share to these platforms? Really the same question, or it'll get to the same answer, which is projects that I've worked on or projects that I've initiated or projects that I've developed. Absolutely, we're beginning to split hairs here. You have to split hairs as finely as you can to think about all the various aspects of the discussion. Each one could be a separate share, or the level of the projects you've worked on, or the level of the accomplishments associated with those, or your educational ongoing work that you might be doing, or books, articles, or white papers, which is going to be the bulk of it that we share. Information being the new currency, but I'm going to begin to seed this stuff in. So like they're reading over my shoulder and they see I'm perfect. I'm perfect. When we do share, and there's a lot on the LinkedIn lecture about this, when we do share, it's going to flow across a 3-level network on LinkedIn. If we let it go out to Twitter, it'll go out into the ether there where it can be searched. And when you suddenly realize, boy, this adaptability and new ideas is really the key in this new world that we live in, this new paradigm that we now live in, that means you're going to have to not only change your outreach, shares, and messaging, you're going to have to make sure all your career marketing materials are working effectively together. That's part of effective brand management, creating a little bit of synergy. And then open Pandora's box, this endless self-marketing campaign that happens 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times per day, like breathing. I'll walk you through exactly how to build this. Now, part of brand management is to be authentic and have some integrity and be genuine. I hope you're feeling that today, because my heart is in this. I'm also shy and introverted. So am I not being authentic? Am I not having integrity or being genuine because I don't show you that? Well, my friends can't even see that part. So that's just for me. Brand management requires a personal inventory. Now, if you took the resume renovation lecture or the LinkedIn lecture, we talked a lot about this, but you're going to have a sit down with yourself, a deep dive interrogation to rediscover all your personal assets, your career pieces that you could talk about that you probably have let go by the wayside. So only discover that from personal inventory. Watch the resume lecture, watch the LinkedIn lecture. There'll be much more about that. Now, once you do begin to collect all these items, remember to look both inside and outside our career, because what makes you tick? Why are you interesting? Yes, capable and qualified. That has to be mixed in there too. But don't forget those things. If you're a 5-time marathon runner, my gosh, that has to be somewhere. That's part of the story that makes you interesting. Years ago, I had a gal that had a tremendous marketing background, nice career progression, everything else. I'm like, wow, nice background, nice. I love it. I love it. Let's elevate the story a little bit. But before all this wonderful, nice marketing background, at some earlier iteration of herself, she'd become a certified locomotive engineer. And you like choo-choo train? You better believe, right below the degree, right below all this magnificent marketing, in 7-point bold, certified locomotive engineer. At first you think that's like some turd. Oh, get that off my resume. Really? Do not understand how many interviews you're going to get for marketing because of certified locomotive engineer? I have a whole table full of people that are qualified. I can't see the forest for the trees. There's so many qualified people here. I need someone to jump. Oh my gosh, I have to hear that story. Put it on the, no, I have to. Nice background too. No, I have to hear that story. Bring her in. Don't hide your story. That's the part that sells. That's the reason why you're going to get it in the first place. Those could be things inside of work or outside of work. Think about, I'm not going to read everything up on screen here because you can read it yourself. Think about all those things that become part of the story if you told it that way. Now you're going to have way too much content, which means just like resume, just like LinkedIn, you're going to have to filter it through this singular question. Why is it going to be the best business decision they're going to make today if they choose to hire me? And I have to be showcasing and sharing all things that meet that definition. Every single share that I put out there with 3, 4, 5 words of my own opinion elevates my brand. And yes, we want it focused mostly on these things. It's really about performance. They wouldn't hire you, wouldn't keep you if you weren't somehow affecting performance. So let's make sure to really understand what the story needs to be and carry that story across everything else. Once it's across everything else, that's where your social media marketing will support everything. Supports the resume in their hands, supports the LinkedIn profile when they're looking at it, supports their impression of you. Not the LinkedIn lecture, but let's talk about this. LinkedIn is the de facto social networking website for your work life. Just like Facebook, but this one's for career. A few other things too. It's this communications, marketing, research, and advertising platform. A business person thinks of LinkedIn that way automatically. But you need to think of LinkedIn this way automatically. You have a career brand to manage forevermore. Now, here's my numbers from today. That's 11,847 direct connections. 3 levels out, that's a pool of better than 21 million people. Social media market your way to a new job or career. Yes, we're going to choose whatever the 2 or 3 platforms that we have. We're going to dress them up appropriately. So watch the LinkedIn lecture. I'm going to make sure I'm showcased as a mover and shaker, which means I must be at 500 plus. That requires 501 connection or more. By the way, I teach in my LinkedIn lecture how you get to 501 in 4 days. 4 days, even if you're at 0 today. So go back and watch that segment, run through that exercise this evening. Get your numbers above 500 so that you're labeled 500 plus. Oh, move or shake your finger on the pulse. And then everything you share, there are 2 ways on the profile to elevate it. One of them is to literally pin it to this little wide box. I have 3 or 4 very special things I'd like you to see, and I pin them right to that box. And then once you start sharing, this second very large white box is just below that. If this is not on your LinkedIn profile, it's because you're not sharing. You can't turn this box on or off. It comes on automatically the moment you begin to share. And after a few months of not sharing, it evaporates and goes away. Looks like you've probably left the profession or maybe passed away, which we hope you didn't. But people judge you by this. This is really how they look over your shoulder to see what you're reading, doing, sharing, attending. That's persuasion. Whatever you put there can help make your case. Value in every word will open doors. As much as I grew up thinking this is a disgusting phrase, perception is reality. What do you mean perception's reality? What you build, what you earn, what you work, that's reality. Grew up in small business. Whole families, life is on the line in the small business. So that's what you learn. Perception is reality is nonsense, and you have to really build it to earn it. But in today's world, if we don't understand it is not good enough just to be great at what you do, you also have to manage the perception of that so that you get the credit for it. And we simply change those things with a few small shares. Years of I'm not technical to clear choice for the role in 60 days. Social media share plan. How do we build this thing? It's really very, very, very simple. Yes, it's going to take about 2 hours of homework. I'm going to build a list of 25 to 30 content items. This part is not mysterious unknown. Articles. We're going to go to Google, click the news tab, do some article searches. We can put in the different names of the players in the industry. We can put in different challenges within our industry. We can put in any other keywords from your background. And you know what you're going to find searching the Google News tab? Suddenly all these articles, write down the list, all these articles that talk about your profession or the players within your field or whatever's going on in your field. And it has a title, which you can simply copy and put quotes around. Nice title. People get what it is. Has a link. And then you simply in front of it put 4, 5, 6 words of your opinion. Let's go back to that finding the very best on Twitter. Well, I don't care what profession we're in. You are not the best of the best if you have not shared a best practices technical white paper. By the way, you do not have to write that thing, so don't get too scared yet. And if you don't know what that is, you can simply Google best practices technical white paper. It will come right up. Somebody already decided the very best way to do your job already. You don't have to write that thing. Just go find anyone that you'd like. Doesn't really matter. And then share it with your opinion. And your opinion could be anywhere as long as it's genuine. What a great take. There's my 4, 5, 6 words. What a great take on best practices for exactly what I do with a link. Not sure I agree with best practices for exactly what I do with a link. Could not disagree more with best practices for exactly what I do with a link. I can take any position I'd like. So it's a trap to be always searching for, I have to find the perfect one. No, you don't. You just have to find something that talks about your field, your industry, the players, and that's a device for you to share good, bad, or ugly opinion. The good, bad, or ugly opinion you share, 4, 5, 6 words, because nobody wants to read. Let's keep it short. That's the glue that sticks to you. You share all the time and don't include the opinion, nothing sticks to you. You become a random sharer. But if they keep seeing your name, they keep seeing your headline, your picture, and these 4, 5, 6 words of opinion, my goodness, this person's always sharing something interesting, always has something interesting to say. Now, as I collect up those items, books, articles, events, by the way, events, almost all going to be virtual right now, but anything that's going on in events already has a website. Anything going on in the next 4, 5, 6 months already has a website. Books, well, Amazon or Barnes and Noble, whichever one of those you liked, get a link to that book and all that kind of stuff. Articles, Google News search, we talked about that. Now, if you came up with 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be, that things that are very special, it's very special to me. This is a special one. Well, grab your calendar, mark a date on when you want that one to go out to social media. For the rest of them, we simply create one text document, Microsoft Word or whatever you want, doesn't really matter. Any text document, 4, 5, 6 words of opinion. Here's the title to the article book event, in quotes, already ready to go. Here's a link that's ready to be shared. When I go through 25 to 30 of those items and they're all ready in a list, that's the 2 hours of homework. Then I simply wake up tomorrow morning and I go, first cup of coffee, copy, paste, share. Second cup of coffee, wait a minute, copy, paste, share. I'm hungry. Copy, paste, share. Time for lunch. You know what? Coffee hound, afternoon. Copy, paste, share. You know what? End of the day, no more coffee, but copy, paste, share. End of the day, I have a coffee now because I have a lecture. Always do like a coffee during my lectures. So it's 4, 5, 6 times a day, like breathing without thought. That is 2 total minutes per day. Anybody can do it if you do the homework. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. No thought involved. You've got to make this like your heart beating. You don't think about your heart beating. It just happens. You have to make this be like you're breathing. You don't think about breathing. It just happens. And it's going to be different angles of all these things that you see up on screen that could drive us. Could be internal projects you could talk about as long as you're allowed to discuss those things. It could be all sorts of things that you might have a hand in. It could be something fantastic your company is doing that you don't have a hand in. All sorts of things that could raise people's perception of you. Now, back to the social media share plan itself, you're going to have to think like a storyteller, and yet that word has a little bit of a negative connotation. We tend to think of a storyteller as someone that is fantasizing or making something up. No, that's not what I mean. Whatever you say has to be absolutely letter true, but I can tell you a story in a very dull, that doesn't work. Or I can tell you something so interesting. Oh my gosh, that was such an interesting moment. When the CEO had reached out to me to extend the offer. Think about how you tell a story and create atmosphere. Storyteller. Because all of this outreach is like a date. That's how it's got to be about them. You got to draw them into it. So our job is to set the stage in the atmosphere, really to put them in our shoes, looking out of our eyes, getting them to think like us. So yeah, I'm gonna tell these stories in a very truthful but non-confessional way. Again, growing up Catholic, I know all about negotiating sin. There's no sin of omission. There's only sin of commission. So here, letter true, everything I say, but I can leave out any part of the story I'd like to leave out. And yes, I'm going to give myself permission to look back with very truthful but rose-colored glasses, kind of like if I'm sitting down with a dear old friend I haven't seen in 5 years, probably that same kind of an attitude. I'm going to gloss over the story. I'm going to forget the negative parts of the story because that's not exciting or something you want to share with your dear old friend. And that helps elevate your brand. It helps them feel confident about what you might be able to do. That's a little bit of the nuance in this process. Every one of these shares is a slight figurative little nudge to coax or draw attention. So here's a few shares. I'm going to pull these center stage. You can see them a little bit more here. We'll just talk over this piece. So these are just some samples over the years. First one on the left here, found myself up at Rainbow Push Wall Street project. I guess I have to come back on screen for this one, for this story. The first one here on the top left, my gosh, that was, good and bad in life happens all at the same time. We don't really have control over that. Same week my father was passing away in hospice. Suddenly, I'm up on stage at Rainbow Push Wall Street project next to the Reverend Jesse Jackson, flying down to Florida on the weekends to see my dad and coming back. My dad was so excited, even though he was in his challenge at the end of his life. He's like, oh my gosh, how do these things happen to you? Learn to open doors. But that particular day, and I'm kind of glad the little screenshot of me, or am I put it wrong way here? Oh, there we go. Little screenshot up here of me is so small because boy, I was stressed out that day. You can imagine that's the week my father's passing away. So I had about 2.5 hours sleep, but you know what? Because I'm standing in front of a wall, opportunity knocks. Opportunity knocks whenever it knocks, and you've got to be ready. So like it or not, that's the day. I take those challenges personally, by the way. And so they had 5 career coaches there for a roundtable discussion. And we're each going to get like 12 minutes to speak. Oh, 12 minutes. I'm like, oh, so generous. 12 minutes. What can I do with 12 minutes? I can do a lot with 12 minutes. And understanding who the audience was, I decided to go a little more evangelical in approach. And I ran 40 slides nonstop flying behind me and just gave a 12-minute motivational pitch about brand and taking control. And I got the very first question, and I got 30 to 35% of all of the questions. And that's on a day that I had 2.5 hours sleep and was very stressed. A few of the other things that are up here ended up over at the Google headquarters for Social Media Week. Radio show host called me, said, hey, you going to the keynote at Google? I'm like, of course. When is it? It's Friday, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh, great. See you there. And so I got there 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday. February is about my most busy month of the year in a normal year. So it's even exponentially a little bit busier in this year, of course. And I get there 8 o'clock in the morning, and guess who didn't show up? The radio show host. But you know what? Opportunity knocks. I'm there, and I'm sitting there listening to these speakers, and suddenly one of them goes, I was not the speaker. Suddenly the speaker goes, the real world is insufficient. And it's like the Liberty Bell going off in my head. Like, oh, that's what I've been trying to say for a long time. We have to exist in the virtual world. A couple articles down below, not very uplifting, but they're really right for what I do. Let's pull these large again. We're going to show you a few more. Let's see what else we got here for you. So a few more shares. Here I am up at WHCR Voice of Harlem Radio. Been up there 4 or 5 times. That was a lot of fun. That is 2 hours of drive time. And this particular host, nothing is planned. And so it's really slide into the mic and put the headphones on at 6 o'clock in the morning for right after commercial break. We go right back on, and 2 hours right off the cuff. And I'm pretty good off the cuff, so I have a lot of fun when I'm there. Top right, there I am up at, really not doing anything about my profession. I am up volunteering, representing the New York Public Library, volunteering to go up and talk to lawmakers up in Albany to try to secure some more library funding. By the way, John does not get library funding, so I'm not securing that for me. I volunteer at the New York Public Library. Down below, of course, fun. I got featured in AM New York, so that's always a little bit fun. Got a lot of those over the years. Broke the record for a regularly scheduled lecture at NYPL. That's very exciting to me because I'm so competitive. Even though I may be shy and introverted, I'm still competitive. Couple more articles, those kinds of things, all of which may not be exciting to think about you sharing, but it's exactly right for what I do. You now have to go get some things that are exactly right for what you do. What's going on in your industry? Who are the players? What are the challenges? Thought I was getting punked. I got this call going, you're in Essence Magazine this month. I'm like, who is this? I should go look. What if I'm there? This is back in 2012. Even in those years, very difficult to find a magazine as the magazine stores in New York City began to evaporate. And then that particular one was very difficult to find because Barack was on the cover, but then I found it, and my gosh, there. By the way, see the shorter gal in the picture? She's the one that got me into the magazine because she was standing outside the New York Public Library's Job Search Central. And after my lecture, I was out there answering some questions, and she suddenly said, my gosh, I'm blogging about my job search for Essence Magazine. I'm like, oh my gosh, you should have my book. I can connect the dots very quickly. I did not ask anything for it. I trusted it would find its way somewhere. And a couple months later, I get this call. And by the way, there she is talking to some other career coach, and that's my book on the reading list. My book makes the reading list. So learn to open doors. Magical things happen when you open doors. That's the same way I got up on stage with suddenly Reverend Jesse Jackson, which I've done 4 or 5 times now. So I was like, how does this happen to me? Or landing on Arise TV, same kind of thing from working with a producer, learn to open doors. Think about how you can open a door and change your future just a little bit. Yeah, this is about what we don't like, about self-promotion, endless self-promotion while keeping our ego in check. And that's about the influence piece. A few more shares to inspire you. You have to look for shares that are correct for you. Group picture from one of the events that I did, so I reshared that. Then I'm doing an event at Grace Institute. That's a wonderful institution. If you're unfamiliar with them, they help a lot of the gals in the city here get their skills up to where they need to be to really compete effectively for some really great jobs. So I work with them as much as possible. Sharing all sorts of different things. You have to think about what's the perception over time. Here I am a couple years ago doing my online boot camp. It is about to go online permanently here shortly. But at that time I was doing it live, and someone took a picture right in the middle of it. And yep, certainly saw my father, who was a Catholic deacon, saw him in that pose many times. I'm sure he would have loved that shot. Or up at WHCR, Voice of Harlem Radio. Now, I didn't make it into the shot, but my book, my coffee did. Same kind of thing. All of that can flow through either to where we pin it or over to that larger piece. I can also, on the LinkedIn side, if you have something more significant to say yourself, say, think of it this way. Could you write 3, 4, or 5 articles? Nobody wants to read, so keep those to a page, page and a half. Page and a half, nobody wants to read. I have to say it at the library all the time, waiting to get struck by lightning. Page and a half, nobody wants to read. You could write 3, 4, 5 articles that somehow surround your profession of what you do. Maybe if I came to you and said, oh, could you talk to my kid? They'd like to kind of come down the same road as you. Could you give them some pearls of wisdom, some advice? That's the right, wise mentoring tone. 3, 4, 5 articles that really are a demonstration of exactly why they should hire you. Then you post those over on LinkedIn in their blog system, where you can put up full pieces with visuals. Everything else becomes another avenue to share things. When you think of structuring your shares, think about these kinds of things. Just finished a great project on, well, what projects have I touched that are sellable? Or I've been selected to lead a new initiative on digital content development. Ooh, so flashy these days. Or I'm a member of a divisional cost containment and reduction committee. Well, you're not going to be very popular, but it certainly is needed in some organizations. So absolutely. Or maybe you're reading Social Media Marketing, An Hour a Day by Dave Evans. What a great book. Okay, great. You need to be reading some of those perfect books. Developed a new project on something that shows your skill and depth. Attending a lecture series, even today, maybe attending a lecture series on social media marketing, and you leave off job search and career, because everybody needs to understand social media marketing for whatever their function is. Share that with a link. I want you to begin to think of all of these things as those gentle figurative nudges, the small little taps on the shoulder going, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that. Small changes change effect. Even sharing accolades, sharing praise for other people Congratulations, Dave. I see you're reading Social Media Marketing, an Hour a Day by Dave Evans. Really got me up to speed. Yes, I can give you a spotlight, and some of that reflected light comes back to me. So I want you to think about that. The easiest way to be a leader, and this is part of elevating your brand as well, is simply to be a leader. Now, of course, I work for myself at this point, but I certainly worked for many other people over the course of my life. And every time I've worked for somebody else, no matter what the job is, I simply act like I own the company. And when I tell that in live audience, a couple people burst out laughing because they imagine this guy marching into any role and just, I own the place. That's not really what I mean. What I mean is I've never allowed myself to be limited by some ridiculous 8.5 by 11 sheet of job description. I'm sorry, but that is a starter idea of what you might like me to tackle. You hired me for my brain. So I intend to do whatever I feel needs to be done, whether it's on that paper or off the paper. And that's a pretty amazing thing when people see it. There was one point in my career, I was getting promoted every 4 to 5 months for like 2 years straight. I'm like, could you slow down? Not with the money. I need the money. But could you slow down? I'm about to have a heart attack here. I was not fooling these people. They were so excited by what I was delivering. They're like, what if we put one more thing on the plate? One more thing on the plate. Be a leader. Don't wait for something to be assigned. Is there something that has to be solved, or something that has to be invented, or something that has to be new? I don't know what that might be, but don't wait for permission, and don't wait for somebody else. You're the change agent, or they'd like you to be. And we also have to understand, besides just those physical shares that we create, that one 25 to 30 list, we have to understand that all communications become part of our social media marketing. And that means everything, even all our interactions for others, including things like a use of a signature block. This is the most overlooked piece of social media branding for most people. When you open up a new email to send someone an email, is it blank? You don't have a signature block. At the bare minimum, it should say Best John Crant. Here's my title. Here's my company, or no company if I'm not employed. Here's my phone number. Here's my email. Well, what? I have to put my email in my email? No. For you, I'll hit the special the key, and I'll toggle a copy. Yes. This is attention to detail. This is how you demonstrate how easy you are to work with, how your follow-up will be when they do hire you and put you on staff. So at the bare minimum, also, I think you have to guide them to your sales brochure, which is on LinkedIn. Now, here is my absolutely ridiculously large email signature. If I've emailed you before, you've probably seen it. The first time I wrote this, I was probably in a little bit of a meltdown. What will my mother say? Wow, looks like you made it, John. You know what? Everything here is true. But growing up Catholic, and the modesty, humility, which I joke about, but boy, that's ingrained. It was very difficult to put these things down on paper. But you know what? I own them. I earned them. They're mine. You're going to have to give yourself permission to get past it. Now, of course, I've gotten past it now. But the first few times I sent it out, I was mortified with embarrassment. Yours may not be that in depth. It could be something as simple as these kinds. I just want you to know that you have to take control. You have to have a little bit of something so that every business email you ever send again for the rest of your life travels with your sales brochure. So one click, they can get you a 3-dimensional sales brochure on LinkedIn about you. And of course, that's all part of how to reinforce energy and commitment and drive. Are we really ready? Are we ready to move forward? Your job, everything on screen here is your job. Take your first step, or whatever your next step is, and understand that this, just like getting that rusty old lawnmower that's been sitting all winter, one of those old fashioned ones with the pull cord, it's like choking, trying to start. Your job is to get that old thing started. Your job here is to get your process started. Do the 2 hours of homework, wake up in the morning, begin to try your first steps. Some will be successful and some will be learning experiences for you. That brings us to the end of today's lecture. It's a career evolution. I want you to think about what is coming next. So on Thursday, let's get by this one here. On Thursday, I know it's here somewhere. Hang on one second. I am just a little bit. There we go. This is what we're looking for. If we can get up on screen so you can see it. Hang on one second. Always important that we can both see the screen. Well, let me reshare because it looks like it's... 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. Boom. Long way to give you those dates. Let me bring those center stage for a minute. So we'll be back on Thursday. That is 12 noon for Supercharging Your Job Search. That's a 12 noon lecture on Thursday. The resume renovation, LinkedIn profile, showplace, social media marketing, today's lecture, those will remain available for the time being over on my Facebook. And yes, they're over on my YouTube channel. All the rest of the lectures for this month, Tuesdays and Thursdays, are already scheduled. So if you would like to see what those are, you can just go over to my website, selfrecruiter.com, and check those out. And, if you're feeling that you're not getting the interviews that you're supposed to get, or you're not winning the interviews you're supposed to get, or they're just not seeing you correctly as the right individual for certain jobs that you desire and want to go after, reset your career brand, work on the resume, work on your LinkedIn profile. And you know what? If you need a great expert to help you, you know where to find me. Just selfrecruiter.com. Check on the services tab. All the packages are there. And if you need to chat before you figure out which one is the right package for you, send me a quick email and we'll have a conversation. Have a good rest of your day. And don't forget to share this with your friends. Hit like, subscribe, all that kind of fun stuff. And my gosh, don't I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.